Hello my friends, finally I have the confirmation of what was kaboomed yesterday in Gvardiiska military airfield. Russia lost several of the helicopters. So here we have the evidence, the pictures on the right dated from August 22nd and this is August 30th. There was attack helicopter Mi-24 which is gone, you may see it on this image, as well as Mi-8. Mi-8 here, Mi-8 here. Total different picture. Also, there is the question about those couple of the helicopters and this one too, because then the drone hits the ground, the apron in this case, there is the shrapnel which flies with a very high speed, hitting everything around, including those helicopters. They are made out of aluminum or alloy, easily penetrated material, so they might be also no-go in this case. For example, this year there was the strike on the Russian helicopters in the Kursk region. Shells landed very close to helicopters, but nevertheless they were shrapnelled, absolutely shattered and no-go. Here you can see the canopy of the helicopter. Just imagine how many particles penetrated it. Yeah, the canopy itself is armored, but the rest of the helicopter no. In this case it was the hammer shell, but drones also may carry those small particles. I see that Ukraine is more and more focused on Crimea. For example, today we had those images coming from Crimea. It means that the Russian air defense systems were in operation. I guess it's S-300 or S-400 with big missiles. Kabooms were heard in Sevastopol and Simferopol. I am waiting for more confirmation, maybe Ukraine hit something there. And today this video is published showing Flamingo missiles in action. So 1, 2, 3 of the launchers with Flamingo, and they're launching missiles somewhere. I guess it's the Black Sea, so maybe they're flying towards Crimea after all. This missile could be very effective if not penetrated by the Russian air defense, of course. For this, Ukraine needs to manufacture lots of those missiles. Yeah, it's kind of loud as locals report around Belbek airfield. This is the main airfield for fighter jets in Crimea, I would say. That's the Russian base for Sukhoi 27, Sukhoi 35 fighter jets, and not only. Well, I hope we'll get more satellite images coming from the place. For now, we have the report with satellite image confirmation. Yeah, this image is not good, so I will wait for more detailed picture, but there was the strike on this facility. This is the FSB facility in Armyansk, Crimea. Strike was conducted by Neptune missile, which was not intercepted. This is the place for helicopters, I guess. Well, officials say that it is the Russian FSB facility. This is the most recent satellite image, but I'll wait for more. And here is again the operation of primary unit. They use lots of the drones to hit Russian raiders and air defense capabilities in Crimea. Well, not only in Crimea, but mostly in Crimea. You can see kind of the big antennas there, so everything has been hit. This is not the air defense antenna, but the big one, which was, but it still was the Russian surveillance. Small antennas, big antennas, everything is being hit. And also surveillance help at first to identify, yeah, this is clearly some sort of the Russian S-300 or S-400 system, which was kaputted. Very nice. Primary is the best Ukrainian unit if we speak about sabotage drone operations far away from Ukrainian border. Yeah, Ukraine continued to hit Russian oil facilities. For example, yesterday there was the strike again on the Krasnodar refinery, which was already on fire for a couple of days, but Ukraine decided to finish it off completely. Altogether, since the beginning of the war, Ukraine conducted around 100 strikes on Russian oil refineries in particular, eliminating roughly 21% of the Russian refinery capabilities. You may see that refineries in the European part of Russia mostly were hit, and still Ukraine is in lack of the long-range capabilities to hit the Russian refineries far away from Ukraine. However, it's just temporary, because with the help of the Flamingo missile, for example, with a range, as they say, 3,000 kilometers, the refineries in the center part of Russia could be reached. So potentially in the future Russians will have to rely on refineries far away in the east. Or Russians might cooperate with their allies in Belarus. Belarus has a big refinery, so Russians may send oil there and receive fuel. Maybe such an agreement is also reachable with Kazakhstan, so Ukraine is unable to eliminate Russian refinery capabilities completely, but still what Ukraine does is the huge hit on the Russian economy, Russian military, because Russian oil sector is the biggest sponsor of this war. Right, we have the satellite image from Burtulinovka airfield in Voronezh Oblast. Ukraine hit this facility, so there is the damage to the local hangar. I wonder if it was the plane inside by the time, but it looks like it was the storage for the Russian Shahid drones. Well, if we zoom into the image, you see those kind of the rails here. Well, they could be the launchers for the Russian Shahids, or those could be just boosters between parking stands on the apron. From the information I have, Russia wasn't really keeping their military aviation there, even helicopters, because this airfield is kind of close to Ukraine, but it could be definitely the base for the Russian Shahids. There were multiple reports about the wildfires happening in Gelendzhik, the area not far away from the Putin's palace, which has not yet been fully in use by Putin, but Russia pours lots of the money in this huge construction. Basically, it's the main reason for Navalny to be jailed, because he spoke about this palace. He flown there with drones, exposing the facility. Also, he collected some of the intel about this construction. This video on Navalny's channel became the most viewed. Almost 2 hours of the video, 134 million views, which equals the population of the Russian Federation. Nevertheless, most of the Russians, they still support Putin. The video was published 4 years ago, and not long time after publishing this video, Navalny was arrested. He returned back to Russia and was jailed. And after a few years, he died in the Russian prison. So the wildfires are now very close to this area. Russia is using every sort of the means to extinguish them. Whether those wildfires were caused by missile or drone strikes, for now it's hard to say. To some other news, Germany is changing its strategy towards Ukraine. Instead of deployment of its peacekeeping forces to Ukraine in case of the ceasefire, Germany wanted to increase the military support of Ukraine with weapons, which I think is the better variant, because military support of Ukraine is needed right now. But speaking about ceasefire and the possible deployment after, well, the ceasefire itself, I think, is possible or not possible, we'll see. For now, we don't have any sort of the clue or evidence that ceasefire will be out there in the close-by perspective. And Chancellor Merz again stated that this war may continue for extended period of time. Before, he specified many more months, like he told, I think, the last week, but now he says extended period, so for a long time ahead. Well, you know my prediction, guys. I expect it to last for a few more years. At least as far as the Russian regime is alive, there will be confrontation between Russia and Ukraine. Well, the short periods of the ceasefire are also possible, but now no chance for it in a close-by perspective. And even Russian officials from military like Gerasimov or Peskov, spokesman of Kremlin, they stated yesterday that they'll continue the special military operation in Ukraine until the goals are reached. Well, Peskov said about more details that their priority is obviously to reach their goals in diplomatic way, but military way is also possible. So Russia basically is not turning away from their major demands for Ukraine: denazification, demilitarization, giving up Ukrainian territories for Russia. The only change which happened for the last half a year that Russia coordinates its efforts with Trump, using American president as the diplomatic weapon to reach their goals finally. And I would say that Russians are doing it in the most successful way possible. The only mistake they do that Ukraine is, after all, is the sovereign nation and state, so it will not give up Donbass just like that. No, Russians will have to gain it using their military power, which means more losses and more instability of the Russian society. Trump cannot force Zelensky to capitulate. No. What Trump might do is to cancel the military support and intelligence for Ukraine completely, but I don't honestly think that Trump is really capable for that. And Washington officials, they say that they'll continue to sell, at least sell weapons to European allies for them to deliver weapons to Ukraine, at least like that. I honestly do not expect anything better from the Donald Trump's administration. Yeah, what should I expect from the guy who posts those kind of the pictures in his Truth Social? Well, here it was repost, but here is the post of Donald Trump. The world will soon understand nothing can stop what is coming. Nothing can stop what is coming. What is coming? And he has this Q+. QAnon once again, or what? What is this? Guys, what should we expect from Donny? More portions of cringe or what? This is the most stupid, idiot and weakest president in the history of the United States. Sadly, we are living by the time then United States president should be really a strong guy, not this orange buffoon. And Donny is really crazy about the Nobel Prize. He really wants to get it for his own personal ego. According to the New York Times, he called to Modi, Indian Prime Minister, and almost demanded to send a letter to the Nobel Committee for the recognition of Donald Trump as the main peacekeeper who managed to stop the war between Pakistan and India, which lasted for 75 years. But Modi said no, America was not directly involved, and the war itself is not ended. It may spark at any moment. It is just the ceasefire which was agreed between Pakistani and Indian side in their direct communication. Well, Pakistani officials actually did it. They sent a letter to Nobel Committee, and Donny wants the same letter from India, but Modi said no. And according to this article, Trump went angry. They relied to some of the White House officials who disclosed some of the details about this conversation. A new red carpet for Putin. Putin went to China to meet with Xi Jinping, and not only, it's happening as the part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It is not just China and Russia, there are multiple of the countries presented in this organization, like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, India, Pakistan and Iran. So India and Pakistan, they go to the same organization by the time they have confrontation. And many other countries, mostly from Asia, are joining the same summit as partners of organization or prospective members. And yeah, here Russian propagandists are filming Putin to show that he is not isolated from the world. You see how many flags are out there, red carpet once again. And honestly, guys, here Russian propaganda unfortunately is correct. We see that Putin is not isolated. He has red carpets in the United States, and later on American president even shows the picture with him and Putin as something extraordinary. He is also very welcome to those international meetings. And also, guys, I published this video on my Telegram channel where people started to comment, oh, those are the third world countries with weak economies. No, I asked ChatGPT, and global GDP shares for those countries is actually bigger than United States and European Union countries. 31–33% for Shanghai Cooperation Organization and 30% for United States plus EU. But the global GDP share is still more in the United States compared to this organization if we speak about United States dollars. But the global share trade exports is almost equal, as you may see. So China, India, Russia and other countries in this bloc, they create they want to create this huge economy superpower, and in many spheres they are almost equal, or as for the purchasing power already surpass Western countries. So no, those are not the poor countries. The big issue for them that they cannot unite properly as Western countries. West has its own values of democracy. However, it was put under the question again by Donald Trump, who is seeking to cooperate with dictatorship countries like Russia. Well, here my message that it's better not to underestimate those new blocs created as an opposition to democratic Western systems. And the Communist China is leading this movement. They use Russia in their own interests, as well as other countries. The second economy in the world really wants to achieve more. Expansion is the goal for Xi Jinping. And again, if you compare figures, nominal GDP in the United States dollars, China 17%, Russia 2%, but Russia has nuclear weapons. Russia has enormous resources. That's why it's so important for China and this entire bloc. And Russia is now basically being used as the brutal force to change the world order. Alright, breaking news, the meeting is possible between President Zelensky and Donald Trump in Paris on September the 4th. Kind of soon, I would say in just 3 days. I wonder what they might discuss. There was the meeting between Yermak, the head of the President's Office of Ukraine, and Davydov. From what we understand so far, judging on many articles published, for example, by Atlantic and Wall Street Journal, that Trump wants to achieve peace in Ukraine by capitulation of Ukraine. So he really wants to follow Russian demands, which were discussed in Alaska, but Europe is against it, as well as Ukraine. That is why Donald Trump's administration is kind of angry on Europe after all. Again, we have this information coming from the world press outlets. But again, Ukraine will never agree on those Russian demands. Alright, it seems like Europe is changing its policy to the military threat from Russia. They expect, I think, the war to start in the European Union countries, NATO countries, in the coming years. So Europe, little by little, is changing its budget to invest more in military production. For example, this is the shell factory in Bulgaria, and Ursula von der Leyen said that many of those shells are coming to Ukraine, which is awesome. It's better to support Ukraine right now than to fight on European Union territory. By the way, Chancellor Merz also mentioned that. You know, guys, Merz is the smart guy as well as many European leaders, like, for example, Macron. Yeah, Macron has his own downsides, but relative to Ukrainian question, he understands everything, and he understands Putin because he spoke with him personally, even right before the start of the war, and he calls Putin a predator who wants to occupy Ukraine. He understands that stuff. Giorgia Meloni, too, by the way, she called for improved security guarantees for Ukraine, Article 5 style, she told, but we'll see how it goes. The Finnish army is also looking to expand its capabilities. Till 2031, they want to have at least 1 million soldiers. Some of them will be on duty, some of them will stay in reserve, but with full readiness in case Russia strikes their country, because Russia is building military bases right at the border with Finland. Poland plans to expand defense spendings to 4.8% of GDP in 2026, which is the record number from all of the NATO countries. Yeah, even the United States, they spend 3 with something percent. And in 2027, they may reach 5% of GDP, so Poland might become the first country which would reach this threshold. So 200 billion zloty will be spent to maintain and to improve Polish army. For them, it's important because they're very close to Russia, they're bordering Belarus, and they are doing the right stuff, I would say. Alright, great news. The United States Department has approved the massive sale of military assets. We're speaking about Patriot systems to Denmark, worth approximately $8.5 billion. We're speaking about Patriot PAC-3 missiles, Patriot systems, and so on. Well, here I'm not sure, but it seems like those are launchers, but not the systems, as said before. Nevertheless, we're gonna see in the future Denmark Integrated Battle Command System enabled Patriot, and that stuff will be sent later to Ukraine to improve Ukrainian air defense capabilities. The question is when it might happen, because usually it takes lots of the time, many months. Or maybe as a variant, Denmark would decide to put those systems to protect Greenland. An interesting detail was recovered from the Russian surveillance drone, which was shut down by Ukraine recently. So here we have the camera block with a gimbal, which apparently has the internal memory, the camera itself. So in this memory, this video was found. Some of the highway, you see that the camera has the recognition system of those vehicles, for example. It has zoom, focus on the vehicle, you see it has the tracking feature too. So kind of the weird video for the Russian surveillance drone, because it wasn't even recorded in Russia. This is Shenzhen, China. The facility where the camera was tested was already geolocated, and this highway was filmed. It is Nanshan district of Shenzhen, and really it shows that China supports Russian military with everything it can. Cameras, drone technologies, chips, wear, gear, everything of that is going to Russia. Roughly 2 months ago, the foreign minister of China already told to Kaja Kallas, who is the representative of the European Union, that China will not let Russia to lose in this war. So when Russia speaks that they are fighting against all of the NATO in Ukraine, no, actually it's Ukraine with a limited support of NATO fights against Russia, North Korea, Iran, China, maybe someone else. And Russia has more artillery shells coming from North Korea alone than it produces itself. And here again we speak about Ukrainian military support, that it should be not just continued but expanded. Because the big war like that, it is about resources. Guys, we have some good news from the front lines, but this video is already getting long, so for the front lines update, wait for my next video. Probably I'm gonna publish it in the morning. Again, many thanks for my patrons who continue to motivate me to film more videos. Guys, thank you so much for it. And guys, stand by for more updates. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.